This is Samyang 135mm f1.8, a pretty heavy lens with a great image quality and outstanding compression. It's selling for $1,000 and comes at 900 grams to pound. Heavy, isn't it? So my 85mm f1.8 used to be my favorite lens for a long time, but now it doesn't seem to be anymore after I got the 135mm. Omahi, and today we'll get this beast tested and compared to my lovely Sony 85mm f1.8 side by side, so you get an idea what a 135mm image looks like compared to an 85mm. And does it worth the investment in a heavy and expensive lens? Alright, let's get this review started. I don't usually run the sharpness test at the beginning of my videos, but today we got an exception, and I'm very excited to check the image quality of the new 135mm lens. But if you find this kind of test boring, jump to a minute later and watch the real world test. Now starting at f1.8, we got Samyang 135mm on the left and Sony 85mm f1.8 on the right. It's evident that the 135mm is remarkably sharper at the center and almost chromatic aberration free, while the 85mm image suffers from color fringing while open at f1.8. The 135mm is quite sharper than the 85 at the sides and corners. This 85mm lens used to be my favorite, but it can't beat the 135mm at any level. And just to show you how sharp is this 135mm, let's jump to 85mm f2.5. I start seeing Sony 85mm image quality at f2.5 starts matching the 135mm at f1.8 in the center. You heard it right, f2.5 85mm and f1.8 135mm. However, at sides and corners, the 135mm looks way sharper. Again, that's f1.8 135mm versus 85 f2.5. Anyhow, in portraiture photography, most subjects are in the center and around the center. Therefore, corner sharpness doesn't really matter as it's already out of focus. So there are a few points I'm gonna cover here. Image quality, zoom range and compression, white balance, and bokeh. But first let me show you a series of images and I want you to guess which image is which lens. Will you be able to identify each lens? Okay, let's give it a shot. Alright, lens A is Samyang 135mm f1.8 and lens B is Sony 85mm f1.8. Now let's take two images side by side and check out the difference. The 85mm is on the right, 135mm is on the left. In the sample you see now, both images were taken from the same spot. And here how it looks like when trying to match the same subject size with both lenses. We'll get it from here for this comparison, but please note that both images are color graded with the same preset. And I didn't mess with the white balance, because I want to show you the difference. Anyway, if you like to know more about my Lightroom presets, we'll talk more about it later in the video. So since you already had a look at a series of side-by-side images from both lenses, you probably noticed that Samyang 135mm has a warm tone signature, which is not bad in my opinion. And on that shooting day, I used a daylight white balance 5600 Kelvin. However, if you like to match the 85mm white balance with Samyang 135, just increase the white balance about 800 Kelvin and you're good to go. Another clear difference to my eyes is the background compression, which is in my perspective a matter of taste. The more compression doesn't mean the better. Alright, this is another example of background compression. I match the model size as much as I can in both images. But in such a full shot, the 135mm background compression is at another level. Now I wonder how much compression difference we get when getting closer to the model, while keeping the same composition. Well, beside the white balance difference, the 135mm image has less distractive background as well as more compression. Again, it's two different lenses with two different looks. I mentioned my presets a couple of times in this video, and here I would like to share more with you. So we get the three Lightroom presets for different scenarios: nature bounce, urban, winter and fall. And if you like the theme I'm using here, head off to omagamrawi.com/store, use the coupon code 35MM and get yours today. Back to the review. Now, in terms of the image quality, the real-world images confirm the result we tested earlier in the sharpness test. Both images look great, however, when zooming in to 100%, the 135mm image f1.8 is remarkably sharper on this subject, way more than the 85mm. Now at f2.2, the 135mm lens is still remarkably sharper than the 85mm at f2.2. So when using prime lenses, I do prefer to shoot wide open as much as possible, and in this case, f1.8 is the widest aperture on both lenses. To be honest, I'm not gonna buy f1.8 prime lens to shoot at f2.8 or f4, unless I am in a studio and I want my subject to be fully sharp. Therefore, checking the image quality wide open at f1.8 is the best method to know each lens strength. And now we're jumping to the bokeh. I'm having again similar sample images, but at f1.8. The 135mm lens bokeh is no doubt less busier in the background. I feel like it's creamier and offer better subject separation. Check the bokeh quality here and here. Technically speaking, the more the focal length is, the more bokeh you get, indeed if both lenses are at the same aperture. Minimum focus distance. Usually zoom lenses feature a large minimum focus distance. The 135mm Samyang got a 69cm 27 inches minimum focus distance, whereas Sony 85mm has an 80cm 31 inches minimum focus distance, which definitely means that Samyang can get tighter shots. Here I try to get the closest I can to the yacht, wide open at f1.8. The tighter shot is the 135mm. I don't usually shoot that close to any model, and the 85mm minimum focus distance doesn't bother me though. Since both lenses have no such an optical steady shot, or image stabilization, whatever you call it, and in order to guarantee sharp images, make sure to shoot at least with a shutter speed of 1/50th with the 135mm lens and 1/160th with the 85mm lens. I'm saying at least with these settings. Go faster if you got more room. When having both lenses in hand, it's obvious that the 135mm is double the size and double weight of Sony 85mm. We got 900 grams versus 430, 2 pounds versus 15 ounces. The 85mm looks like the child of Samyang 135mm. It's literally half the size. And here are what both lenses look like on my Sony a7 IV body. Here for example, Sony 85mm has a custom button and auto to manual focus switch button. The 135mm Samyang, on the other hand, got 2-in-1 custom button. You can switch between M1 and M2. Well, both lenses are made from plastic. However, I feel that the 135mm has a slightly better build quality. And for those who like weather resistant, the 135mm got a rubber sealing around the lens mount, which is in fact missing in the 85mm Sony. Finally, the 135mm feature an 82mm filter size, whereas the 85mm got a smaller 67mm filter size. Generally speaking, video autofocus is sometimes slower than still autofocus in some lenses. So here we'll run both tests. Starting with still autofocus, we got Samyang 135mm and Sony 85mm. Both lenses are at f1.8. And excuse me if the image shakes a bit, because I'm using the camera thumb button to adjust the focus area. Well, I see that both lenses, the 135mm and the 85, feature a great responsive autofocus performance in still mode. And now when jumping to video autofocus, we have a bit of a difference. Samyang 135mm autofocus is doing very well. However, the 85mm video autofocus is remarkably faster. But it doesn't mean that the 135mm video autofocus is any bad. This Samyang 135mm lens is pretty sharp. I love it and I hate it at the same time. Indeed, I'm impressed by the image quality, but I'm feeling bad carrying such a heavy lens with me on non-professional trips. I mean like when traveling, for example. I probably don't need it while traveling. And why did I mention that in the first place? Well, this lens is no doubt a great piece of gear, and I recommend every wedding and portrait photographer to add such a lens to his equipment. Thank you for watching guys, and I hope this video helped in making your decision. Show me a thumbs up if you found this video helpful, and bump that subscribe button for more camera gear reviews. This was Oma, and see you in another one.